Hi, good day, everyone. I hope you all are doing well. And I'm again here with another episode of Spectrum Talks and Tips International. My name is Dr. Neha. I'm a clinical psychologist, psychotherapist, speech and language therapist, and I'm a mental health advocate. And I am also advocating for autism and ADHD. You can call me neurodivergent advocate and neurodivergent therapist also. And I'm working with communities, brown, black, and white, autistic or neurodivergent community or ADHD community around the world. And today it's a very special moment for us. And maybe if we get a chance to talk about it, because it would be a random kind of a thing if we talk about that how we know each other. But I know Michael since it's like a year, and it looked like that I know him for so long because it's kind of a family. And today, before this conversation, we were talking about a child which will come very soon, and we are so excited about that. And Michael is here. I will also ask Lara to come to the discussion, and we will discuss about further. So thank you so much, Michael, here, and we are going to talk about what he is going to do and how he planned everything about that. So it is kind of a suspense which I'm trying to create, and I learned a little bit from the media. So thank you so much, Michael. Introduce yourself, as I already know you, but I want people to know you also. So where are you
Okay.
from, and your little background, and then we will go further.
Okay. So I'm Michael Donahue. I have a Bachelor of Arts degree in philosophy. I'm born and raised in Canada, so actually right near Canada's capital, Ottawa. And but I moved into the prairie provinces when I was a young adult. And of course, all of this kind of comes up in the book I wrote, which is what we're kind of meeting about today. After discovering I was autistic at age 21, I knew I needed to reevaluate a good portion of my life, actually, most of it, to see how things I'd learned about myself would be altered or changed in light of, I guess a good way to put it is a new lens to look at my life through, because it brought a lot of things into focus. And so when I knew I was going to have to do this reanalysis, I realized the best way to do that is to just go ahead and write it out. So as I thought about things, I wrote them down and then kind of realized, probably even before I started, that, my life's had a lot of bizarre things happen in it, and it might make a good read. So I reached out to uh, another person in the group that Anil and I are part of to act as co-author and kind of take my thoughts and put them into a more readable format. And so that's the result of the book we have that should get published in the next couple of days on Amazon.
So
So
okay, let me because sometime we cannot talk about the work that we are doing, because if you see my type, I don't like even talking about what I am doing. And there's a thing about that. When I was, even you will feel that also, when you were doing some work, or when you were young, you used to talk about your work. If somebody asks you who you are, and you start talking about your work, and it's not an easy thing to get comfortable with yourself. I'm talking about neurodivergent people, by the way. I'm not, if whatever we're talking about over here, it's not necessarily implied to everybody. And if it's not implied to, it doesn't mean that you take any kind of offense from that. It's just a lighter conversation. And the book is it. I think Michael tried to just cover up the thing that he have been facing for his whole life, and it he make it look like simple, but it's not simple. And he's talking about his book, and I'm so excited. Dara is so excited, and we all are so excited about that. It's look like a child for us, a first child that is coming from the family that we have created for some time. And it's like when you offer me that book to just give the forward, and you remember that I was not expecting that I would just read half of the book in first go. There was a time when I it was not actually half, it was maybe 60 to 70% I read that book in first go. And there was a time I used to read a lot of book. At that time I was not that much vocal, but I know that now vocalization is so important. And when once you become a vocal, once you find your voice, it's a different kind of empowerment. And the book is about a lot of different experiences. and that you have been facing. And I think it's not easy to write. And what I mean, I think you're understanding that if you start writing about, talking is something else. Talking is, people are conscious sometimes what they are saying, but when you're writing, you look like that you're telling a story. But whatever you're facing, whatever you are doing in that thing, that come so natural to you. And you're unconscious, and there's a door between conscious and pre-conscious, your super conscious and unconscious, what I think is called pre-conscious. And that just go, when that door just go away, and everything is coming so naturally. So how was that process for you, and how did you decided to write that book? Because your experience is a very different experience, because you are talking about neurodivergent people in the workplace a lot, especially in management post, in management positions,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
people think that autistic people, they barely even understand that they can study, and yet you're talking about something very technical. So yeah, just we want to know about that how you get this idea, and I would like you to write another book on that also. That would be my request from you. Yeah, that is my
On
request.
what life's like in the work world.
Yeah, like that.
Well, I'll first get back to, you are right. Like, for a lot of people, it's a lot of work to delve into their subconscious, and it's not easy work. As I mentioned in the book, I was fortunate that in my early university career, I had to, well, initially I had to go on retreats, and retreats, the type I were on were, young adult retreats, and they were designed to get people analyzing their feelings and thinking about life. So those experiences made me recognize the value of delving into and analyzing your emotions as you're living life, contrary to my parents' generation, where looking at your emotions was just something you didn't really do. You had them, that was it. You don't really think about where they come from. You don't worry about trying to resolve them. It's just they're a temporary experience, and that's it. So I kind of grew up with a bit of, I guess you'd say, from in young adulthood, with psychological concepts in mind, that it pays to analyze what you're going through. So when it came time to do the book, that made it rather easy. So you're saying it's really difficult. And yes, remembering some of these things were somewhat painful, but I had also already analyzed a lot of them many, many times throughout my life. This just allowed me to, I guess you'd say, get some final release. So a good example would be, throughout my adult life, many times I wanted to blame my high school experience and these, my classmates, for the fact that I was not very social, that I was very bad at socializing with people. Now, in light of the autistic diagnosis, I realize, no, I had this bad problem in high school because I'm autistic. And autism tends to have a problem of, we're not very good at socializing. We miss social cues that others pick up on. So that allowed me to release a lot of, I guess you'd say, still some residual anger, and recognize that, here I've been thinking these people need to beg me for forgiveness, when in fact they were just being people, treating somebody who was different the way society taught them to treat somebody who was different. Ostracize them, criticize them, tease them, play practical jokes on them. That's what society has taught people to do with somebody who's different, or at least back then. I'm glad to see society is making an effort now to, convince people to accept diversity, to accept the differences that come from different cultures, that come from different mental makeups, different lifestyles. But when I was growing up, that was not the case. It was very much about anybody who was different needs to be put down, ostracized, and ridiculed. So that's a good thing to see changing.
And if I'm not cutting you over here, because since you mentioned things are changing in society, it is changing because people decided to speak up for themselves. So it is not
Yes.
something, it is not that something some people are giving you space. Only those people are giving you spaces who have first hand experience. For example, there's a very small example. Somebody asked me to do find a small kind of a charity for some child. It was about you could say, about a wheelchair. And those people who donated me were the parents of children who have special children or special person in their home. And I just did one, and they without even asking me that what is happening, what is not happening, they just did that, and they just asked me confirmation that where to put it, where to put that money. So those who have experiences in their life, those who have been those people in their life, they are the people who are going to give you space. Because if it's your problem, then it's your problem, but it's my problem, then it's a big problem. So that is happening. So this is, I would like to add over here. Your experience might be different from mine, but this is what I
Yeah.
feel. So I would like you to continue what you were saying from the society perspective. But I thought people are speaking up for themselves, and a lot of advocates are self-advocate. You know that.
Yes. So, uh, so yeah, a lot of that took place. It was a different era back then. So, like you mentioned, the educators, a good portion of the book refers to what I went through in childhood. Um, the school experience initially, I was excited to go to school, like all my older brothers and sisters. And for the first 2 or 3 years, that was for the most part a positive experience. I mean, there were a couple times with my favorite teacher in grade 1 and 2. I had the same teacher for both grades. That when she had to correct me or criticize me, it hurt a lot, because the other thing about autism is we often tend to be extremely sensitive, what society calls too sensitive. Whereas to us, it's just, sorry, if I feel you've hurt me, I really feel you've hurt me. uh, but then as I got into the older grades, where my difference and inability to stay focused all the time in classes led to physical abuse. And that was just commonplace in those days. They very much believed that anything you did to make a child more like others was for the benefit of the child. And as I quoted my grandmother as having said many times, I heard her say it, spoil the rod, or spare the rod and spoil the child. The concept being that if you don't force a child to be the way they're supposed to be, they're going to be a bad person when they grow up. And nowadays we have a complete different, parents are being taught a completely different mentality about that. It's about accept your child so they reach their full potential. Whereas then it was about force your child to fit into what society expects for people. So definitely there's been some huge strides made at least in Western culture, in terms of how we're dealing with our youth and children. Sadly, you hear some of the old people complaining about it. I certainly heard my mother complain about some of my nieces and the way my sister was raising them. But they all went on to be very healthy, productive children in society that have a lot less childhood hangups to resolve than all of us did. So ultimately, respecting them as people, even when they're children, actually made them better adults in the long run, even though there was still that short term in their teen years where they're very selfish. That is just a normal part of the teen years that we need to accept. Back in my youth, those were the years where they had to literally abuse you into behaving the way society wants. So it's great to see all of that has changed. Actually, in my lifetime, there's been a huge amount of change that has taken place. So, and a lot of it, I think, actually goes back to, thanks to the hippies in the 60s, who really, kind of brought to mind that so much stuff in our society is actually wrong and backwards. And it truly, truly is. In fact, many times I look at, when I'm trying to figure things out, I'll go, well, how does society look at this? Okay, now how's the opposite work? And it's in the opposite that I see better results. And when people wonder, and you've probably heard me say this in the group, for many years I've said, when people challenge me on why do you have to be so different, or why do you have to be so weird, my basic go-to response is, take a look at the world. Why do you want to be normal? If you can be like most of the world and accept all the problems in the world, and that doesn't bother you, why would you want to be that way? It's very inhumane. So the world needs people that are different. And I'd always kind of felt I was different, but finding out I'm autistic really proved that it's not just, hey, I chose to be different. I was actually born to be different, which, kind of changes your perspective. There's been many cases where I wanted to say, oh, I kind of chose this lifestyle. So the problems I put up with, I brought them on myself. Now recognizing that I was born that way to some extent, uh, really does shift the blame back to society. Society needs to be more accepting of people who are different, not try and damage them, hurt them, lash out at them, all the various things I've experienced. Now, you read the book, as you know, this carried over into university. So
And
even though I had was thinking I had a fresh new start in university,
mhm.
all the teasing and bugging and harassment I took in high school just repeated itself in university.
And I'm working with, I don't know, I think you have seen my Instagram also, that I'm working on the experience of the trauma through, like, you have different circumstances that you want to bring change. So I just try, we just have this product recovery from childhood trauma and abuse. And on multiple, like I would say in every discussion, we are talking about one thing. If you're trying to change certain thing in high school, if you change in that time period, or maybe if you changes things in primary school, that is going to create a different kind of a child. If you just let how the child is be, and like you were saying that, even if in this age we have seen multiple cases happening, and people are getting out of the school. There was this even there was some kind of research, and that was about punishment. And if you look towards certain, I actually don't like to take the name of certain kind of approaches, but that's kind of abusive approach. And they still believe that if all things fail, then punishing a child is the last resort. Then we need to do that because we are going to save other children. And my argument was, excuse me, you're talking about a child, a human being, a small child. Do you think that that child is a threat to the whole class? Please first change your tone, the way that you're addressing that issue. And it's not okay to maybe harass or maybe abuse emotionally or maybe physically in every possible way to a person, or to a child, or to a human being who is, you know uh, who's not answering you back. you know they are not doing that because they just want to have a happy thing around. They just don't want other people to get hurt, and in the whole process they are getting hurt. And whenever like you're too noisy, you're too loud to be, you're too intelligent to be in this thing, you're too intelligent to be a manager, you're too smart to do that. There's so many things. For example, I was having these discussions, and somebody told me that that person went through a lot of scrutiny, and he was selected for that job, and that job was in other city. And after the whole interview discussion, they said that, I think you are too, you could say that you're, there's something that you need somebody, this is under skilled. He said that you're too skilled to have this job, and you're too educated to
Yeah.
have that job. And when that person went away, and he said that, I just left everything, and I went to the other city and went there. And somebody told him that in that organization, that there was one manager in that area, and he was less educated, and he just don't want somebody to be more competitive. And there's something else also. Like, I, for example, I'm working with Sound of Autism, and we were having that discussion, and she told me that, my boss told me, Cricket told me that, I think you have seen her also. And she told me that people like you because you're working. They will never say anything to when you're not working, if you're sitting, you're doing things. But they don't like you because you're working, and people are watching you. So you're working, people are watching, and everybody is eyes are on you, that you're working, and they have to work also. That is why they don't want you to work. So they don't, and they
Yeah.
don't have to work. So that is a very smart approach. If I don't know what kind of approach that is, maybe it's smart or not, but that is one of the reason. Like, people would ask that, okay, you're too nice, you're too competent. I think you might, or maybe definitely you have heard those things in your whole life. Too smart, too competent, too gifted, too questioning, too mouthy, something like that. that you don't shut your mouth, you ask a lot of questions. But a person who got a curious,
Yeah,
a curious mind need a
work
food.
world, the work world has its serious problems. Like
Yeah,
it
it is.
really does. It's now a good portion of my working career has been in what's called low income industries. In other words, the main workers or the main workforce are in most cases paid minimum wage or slightly above minimum wage. And the result that ends up happening in most of those industries is they end up with just rife with bad management. And the way it happens is one person comes in who, is not a good leader, but they're very good at talking to a leader and making themselves sound really good and making the leader feel good about themselves. And so they get promoted into a management position. From then on, they only seek to hire people who are like themselves. So the last thing they want is somebody who's a good worker getting promoted. So they don't mind hiring a person to work for them who's a hard worker, because that just allows them to stay lazy. But they will always work hard to make that person feel like an outsider so that they'll work even harder. And this leads to a lot of neurodiverse people, especially autistics, being taken advantage of in the work world, because we have a natural need to do our job well. It's just part of who we are, is if you're going to do something, do it right. And so we very much get taken advantage of in the work world by these poor types of managers. They see you're a good worker, you have ethics, and you're trying to do a good job, even though you're paid poor wages. Oh yeah, here's more work for you. Here's more work for you. But then try and ask for a raise, and they find all these excuses as to why you don't deserve it. Try and seek a promotion, and they seek for ways to get rid of you because they're afraid that you might get promoted to an equal or a higher position than them, and you see them for the bad manager they are. Then they have to worry about their job. So this is what contributes to what they call the glass ceiling for neurodiverse people, is the fact that because in entry level positions we show good work ethics, there are many bad managers who do not want to see us succeed. And some, as you see in my first career job in the book, my manager actually worked hard to ensure I would get fired. The problem was he worked a little too hard, and it made it obvious that that's what he was intending to do. And so it backfired on him. But this sort of thing goes on at times, and it doesn't get caught. The managers tend to stick with managers. So if one manager has a bad idea about an employee, then the other managers tend to just go along with it. Even if they don't agree, they'll go along with it because it's more important to maintain those positive manager relationships than it is to protect the rights and value of the workers. So it's a very sad work world that we have now. Once again, like society, there's changes being pushed there. Managers are being encouraged to be, better managers. But so far, for the most part in the work world, it's more talk than it is action. Companies talk the talk, but a lot of their managers aren't
Which I would
walking the
like to
walk
say
yet.
here too. Like you're saying that everybody know that they have done something wrong inside. People know that. If people think that they
Yep.
act narcissist or whatever, everybody know that what they are doing. You know, you have to be the person. Like you cannot close your eyes when you see a mirror. That is the reality of the life. But they act like they don't care. They act like that they're okay with doing with that. I think they're going to stay with their own deeds one day, and I think that is their job. That's not our job to think about that. But the point is,
Oh yeah.
they don't like people who are working hard, and they're afraid that they are, they are going to get something better. I think them stopping you is not going to stop you. You are going to get what you are striving for. This is what I believe in life. That I think hard work is something that is going to give you what you want, and everybody path is different. But if you look toward the book that you write, there's certain purpose for writing a book. And I would like to ask your perspective. Do you want to tell your story? Because I'm a person who, my perspective would be different. My perspective could be telling my story, but before even telling my story, I would be more interested in giving the parent perspective, giving the client perspective that I'm working with. So what is your perspective, and what is the name of the book, and when it is coming? These are something excited news we are waiting for. So yeah, that is something I want to
Well, actually,
know.
the book should be available on Amazon, like literally. We're just waiting for the cover to come in and upload the cover. Then the ebook is available on Amazon. So the manuscript's already been uploaded, and one of the people in our group is finalizing the cover for the ebook, and then also finalizing. So he's in Ireland, so he expects to have that done first thing tomorrow, Ireland's time, which would be, later tonight here. So I'm hoping by first thing tomorrow morning, the ebook will be available, as well as, and then the paperback book, the Amazon will take some time to review it to make sure it's correct, and then they'll allow it for sale too. My perspective in the book is just basically a walk through my life from childhood, university, early working career, the problems I ran into I don't really delve all that much into the problems I ran into in the marriage, so much as the problems I ran into in dealing with the breakdown of the marriage afterward, and the custody battle, dealing with the kids and the whole court situation. In that, I'm not even sure how much of my autistic nature, I mean, to some extent, it entered into the equation especially in terms of the lawyer I had. It was obvious that she and I were communicating on two different levels. And as a result, I think she gained a dislike for me. Because I was very much about, well, this is the right thing to do, so let's do it. And she was very much about, this is the legal thing to do, so do it. And those two are very different
That is
perspectives.
something
A lot of people think the law is about what's
Yeah.
right,
I
and
think
it's not. It's about
you
what's
haven't seen
legal.
my recent podcast. I will give you this Samuel Levin. He have a law firm, and I asked one question from him, that do we have laws who is going to protect autistic people? He said that I don't think so. Then I think
No,
that's the perspective we have
yeah,
to work for, because you have
my so
yourself one role, and we can work for that. Actually, we have that
yeah,
ability.
I
We have
agree.
abilities, and we have to use those things. And I think writing book about those things is something, a first step. That is why I will
Yeah.
encourage you to do that.
So
Even when you started.
there are, how do you put it? There are people that talk about the dangers of people being judged in the court of public opinion. And I agree, that can be a terrible court to be judged in, because people hear one side of a story and then they're quick to make a judgment and don't ever want to change it. But on the flip side, we have the court of what I like to call the court of the status quo. The purpose of our courts is to maintain the system the way it is. And that system is designed to benefit the rich, not most people. In fact, in Canada, over a decade ago, the Attorney General, now this is the top legal person in Canada in a government post, at a symposium for lawyers, was quoted as having said, look, we have gotten to the stage that 80% of citizens cannot defend their civil rights because it's too expensive. And the result of that is companies, employers can do anything they want to these people. And although technically there's legal grounds for them to fight back, they can't afford the lawyers to fight back. And so in essence, they've lost their civil liberties simply because the legal system's become too expensive. And that's the problem we have. We've seen many cases over the years in both Canada and the United States where the rich win and the poor lose. So when a poor person gets
Wait, wait,
taken to
wait.
court over,
I
they're
have one
likely going to
question.
lose.
I have one question
So,
here. Autism is everywhere. It is in rich and it is in poor. Why people are not coming forward? I think that is the question of that. Like when I was telling you about the little story of the girl that I was raising some fund for, even I was not even clear to do that because I never did this before. and the whole world is doing that, but that was not my experience. That how I'm going to do justice for that. But those who paid me were the people who I have worked with. I have worked with their children, and or I might have worked with their family members or something like that. So that was something like that.
Yeah.
But even then, and if somebody is doing some charity, it means that they can afford that, and somebody have to come forward to do those things. Because over here, if I give you the perspective of the strata, I would work with them. I don't want to disclose anything, but I think they don't want me to tell them something like that. They don't tell this to people. And I said that, okay, this is the first rule. I'm not going to, say this to anyone until and unless you said this to somebody. This is not my job to tell people that what happened to your child. I'm not going to do that. But the point is, those who people have seen ADHD children, who have seen autistic children, they know that your child have this, and also the child is also understanding that he, because like, if you remember the talk in the group that we are having, and we are saying this group, but we are not disclosing about this group because Lara is somebody who I'm going to talk about this group, which we are continuously talking about. But I think this is the problem everywhere, not first world country, not just third world country. It's all around the world.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
even, and I'm not saying that autism is not a problem. I'm not saying autistic people are a problem. I'm just saying that the problem that people are facing, like we talk about the law, we have to do something about that, because
Yeah.
lawyer can be autistic too. If a doctor can be autistic, why not lawyer? If a scientist is autistic, why not lawyer? And like I told you about the Samuel, he have a firm. So that was my interest to talk to him, and I think I will continue pushing him for that, like I am pushing you to write a book about management, because I know that you have a lot to say in that, because you have been there, you have seen their faces, you have seen what is going to happen. So you need to have a, like, maybe, like, there's a lot of people in the group. I'm thinking about this person should do this person should do this, but I'm not forcing somebody. But this is my wish. Like, that was my wish in the start, that I want everybody to be uh, I want every person to be vocal about their problem.
Yeah.
I know that they
No,
chat,
I
I
agree.
want them to be vocal about their problems and who they are, what they do. And I think everybody is slowly and gradually becoming like that. And they are vocal. I'm so happy about that. So this is what it is
Yeah.
all about. And my second, you could say, you wait for things. I am waiting for another book also. After that, I will tell, okay, I want
Well,
to write this book.
actually, I've already decided my next book is going to be my philosophical dissertation. So um, I had a rather lengthy chat with ChatGPT, the artificial intelligence, looking through philosophies, and that it examined, has my philosophy, because I've come to a distinct conclusion that actually resolves predestination and free will. I don't know if you're aware of this, but since about 500 BC, philosophers have argued about whether we live in a static world and we're just, traveling through it linearly. And so we don't realize everything's preset, thus predestination. Humans really don't have a choice. And the converse of where the world's in constant flux and change, and the changes are caused by our will and our choices. So those two philosophies have been at odds with each other for 2,500 years. My philosophy has actually come to a solution with those that actually ChatGPT points out, oh, well, that actually matches up perfectly with quantum physics theory of the many world theory. So it turns out a philosophy that I started arguing with my metaphysics. Well, actually, no, I guess it started with when we were in the logic class in university. I was arguing with them that you can't say that. You're saying you believe in God's plan. Well, then if God plans exist, there's no free will. And his point was, he goes, no, you're not understanding. There's free will, but God already knew what choice you were going to make. So he worked his plan around it.
Yeah.
And
And
my
if
going,
something is
well,
happening,
then you're saying this is a possibility. And he
there's
goes,
something
well,
else.
yeah, it's a possibility because it could happen. And my attitude was, if it couldn't happen because that was God's plan, then it's not a possibility. So you can't have both, that it's a possibility, but God didn't allow for it.
And there's
Because if
something
God didn't allow for it,
I would
then
like to
it's
add on
not a
that.
possibility.
I mean,
So anyway,
that is not a good example maybe, but sometimes
Yeah.
who died due to some accident, or maybe who do that maybe due to some of them, I think it's a sad thing, but they attempt suicide. So people, somebody has asked me this question many times, like multiple people ask this question many times, and they're even discussing about that because in our religion it's forbidden to do that. Like you cannot do that, and somebody who's doing that, you cannot do, you cannot do certain things with that person, and it's forbidden totally. We call it's haram. But people say that, what about those people, how they're supposed to die? Is it written that way or not? So those questions, those religious part, those philosophy that we are talking about, people deny those things, but that is how they are made up of. It is like inclined over there, you know they are looking for those things. But I think if you there are certain things about autistic people who people say that about that, they don't have an abstract thinking. So maybe that is a kind of a dilemma too. But since we are in a very different era now, even if it's a gpt that is invented by a human being, it is not invented by itself. So still human being is
Yeah.
smarter than chat gpt, and still
Oh yeah.
we need human being to make something better than chat gpt. So I think whatever, but still if you ask my wish, I would uh, maybe two or three people can write about that, but that is something we need to talk about, because so many people are losing their job. I just started this Twitter space, and people told me about that. They're so afraid to tell their bosses that they're having that, and they're going to lose their job, or something like that. They don't have job security, and a lot of people are on their own. And you know that how dangerous it could be for a person if they are living in a hostile environment to lose their job. Very
Yeah, it really does depend on where you are in the world.
yeah.
Unfortunately, uh, that's the reality. Now, it's got good and bad. Everyone always looks at their own era that they're living in and looks at the negative in it. But the reality is, in Western countries, people have more job security than they ever, in certain regards, than they ever had in the past. In the past, whether you kept your job or not was always at the whim and will of your boss. So you had to basically give up your own point of view in life and agree with your boss on everything, or else you risk your boss taking away your job, and that risked your livelihood, usually for good, because it was a much smaller, most people lived in much smaller communities up till 100 years ago. And the result was, if you lost your job with one boss, you had a bad reputation and had difficulty getting a job with anybody else. So literally, up to like 100, 150 years ago, you didn't dare disagree with your boss. Whether, even if you knew he was wrong, you didn't dare disagree with him, or your life basically would be over. Very similar to what took place in the Christian religion hundreds of years ago. You couldn't afford to get excommunicated by the church, because that meant you would live a life of poverty, because nobody would be able to hire you. Nobody would be able to sell you food. Nobody would be able to, you literally had to do and capitulate your free will to the church, or else run the risk of being so ostracized you couldn't survive. So nowadays, that is much more reduced. But on the opposite side of it, yes, now our world is changing so fast that even the job security we've come to enjoy in the last 25 years, 50 to 25 years, is evaporating, because industries are changing so fast. So there's no one job type that's guaranteed to still be there in, in the next wave of advancement. So far, like when I was in high school, it was a real push that, oh, you should get a university education. That's what's going to pay you the most and take care of you in life the most. But in hindsight, the trades was the better route, because in the trades, no matter what happened, you still had your trade and you could start your own business.
Yeah.
And at least you could earn some money at it. With a university education, depending on what it was, you were dependent on being hired by somebody.
Sometimes there's a very funny thing about there were when there was I don't know what is happening in your countries, but in our side, sometimes it's a fashion that you certain degree for a fashion. For example, masters in management science or business administration. One time that was a fashion, and everybody was doing that. And when they compare the earning that one MBA was doing, somebody who might have done metric or like 10 standard, metric is for us is 10 standard, or maybe high school, or something like that, and he is earning more than somebody who did MBA. And MBA was a very expensive degree. You have to pay for every semester, and that was very expensive. So this thing happened, but still you cannot deny the importance of education. We are here, you are able to say something, you are able to talk about the philosophy, and you are able to do the philosophical debate because of your education, you know
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
and there's something else also, that the competition, and the hostility that you face in the education system, it is going to polish you a lot. It is going to tell you what is reality, because sometimes people are too naive, like you are good,
Well,
people will be good with you. So that is something you cannot deny with. And I think every experience is a learning experience. It could be good, it could be bad. So I think
that's the big thing, Anila, that's coming. Um, Even the education is changing. So even teachers aren't guaranteed a job in the future, because what we're seeing more and more is there's fewer people going. The numbers might be bigger, but the percentage of people going to university is becoming less because people are educating themselves more online, more and more. The people that, and the interesting part is the people who become the stars in a new field, most of them are self-educated. So a lot of the really top-notch computer coders are people that taught themselves how to code, rather than people that went to a class and got taught a set fashion of coding. And so once again, even in the innovation that's taking place in the world nowadays, we're discovering that it's the free thinkers or the innovators, in many cases autistic or neurodiverse in some fashion, but those that can think for themselves separate from what they're taught, that are the ones that are in most cases become the leaders in the new fields.
and if you look toward, even if you we cannot say that the education that we give, but remember that I am from a, a third world country, from Pakistan, and I have been told, or I have been taught the syllabus of your countries, which was old. So if those things were not applicable on yours, how it was applicable on mine? If I'm able to do, maybe talk to certain
Yeah.
people, I have to learn a lot of things that include how to communicate with people around the world, that include how to communicate with brown community, that include how to communicate with white community, that also include how to communicate with black community,
Yeah.
because communities are divided like that. And I think you can
Yeah, it's
learn.
all different.
Yeah, and you need to learn, actually you have to upgrade your skill. And like you
Yeah.
were saying, that people are trying. And I think, what you know what why people are, if they're autistic and they are able to do and create something, because they stick to that thing, actually. And if something is
Yeah.
not happening, that how angry we could be on that, that why it's not happening, it should be happening, it should be happening. And if you are following something, if you're doing something with that much conviction, either you call it that we are too perfectionist or whatever it is, but that leads you to something, that will lead you to innovation. And I think
Yeah.
every person is beautiful, every
It's
mind is
it's a
beautiful.
big
Yeah.
it's a big modern day irony that, and I was literally approached, months ago to go to Bangladesh and start up an international school. Would I head an international school? Because, and the idea being all the people here want Western education. And I'm sitting here going, yeah, but in Western countries, we're discussing how education is failing. How our educational system is not really preparing our children for the future, because it's still, as much as the many changes as they've made in the last few decades, they still have that core structure of it's our job to give you knowledge, it's your job to absorb it. And that is not going to function in the next, like 20 years from now. That is not a functional educational system. We need to be teaching our students how to teach themselves. That's what needs to be taught from a young age. And our school systems in the West do the exact opposite. When you start to show any original thought, you get put in your place. No, this is the way it's done. This is the way it's done. No, this is the way it's done. And so I find it very ironic that foreign countries that want their students learning English want them to be learning it in the Western educational system, because the Western educational system is failing. And the parents and even some of the teachers in the Western educational system know it's failing. They know this system will not function, but it's the same problem you always have with government. And this comes back similar to managers. These people are afraid to step out of what they've been told are their job descriptions and what they're due to try original things, because that might put their career at risk. And the last thing they want to do is risk their careers. So the result is you can't truly have new innovation. Like in the education system needs to be redone from the root up. And that can't be done in its current system because it's top down. As you notice, I brought this same point up in my philosophy of how the world has to change. It needs to be a grassroots movement of people like you and I, common everyday people who are not politicians. And preferably the less professional they are in some regards, the better, having dialogues about what it is we need, because we make up 99% of the population.
Yeah.
But yet our whole society is being dictated by 1% at the top, who in most cases were born into that 1%. They have no idea what it's like to live as the 99%.
Or that also that, like, a person who is maybe buying, who maybe, whose one drink cost the whole day meal of a poor person. I'm talking about coffee. Sometimes coffee could be very expensive, and chocolate could be very expensive too. And that person is talking about poverty and how to elevate, or how to finish those things, how people can become better or how they can live better. So those people are deciding for the 99% of the population. That's why those policies are not working. And maybe they just want to stay people like that. We have seen those in movies and cartoons, and we have seen the history, so that they just don't know if they are running behind the bread. They're not going to running behind you. They're not going to running behind the money. So they are just thinking about the bread. They're not thinking about the money that they can get. So they will not come out of there, and their talent will not come out. So that is, I think, a we are going towards philosophy, and this discussion is getting more amazing. But I think, uh,
I really think it has to come, like, to me, we need an evolution, not another revolution like the American Revolution.
people die in revolution.
You cannot create a peaceful
lose people.
society on violence. It's that simple. You cannot do it. So it has to be evolution, and it has to come from the bottom up. If you think about even the way we know animals evolve, like physical evolution takes place on the cellular level to start with, and then expands into, they grow a new organ. But that's done at a cellular level. If you look at society as a whole, the cells are the individual people. So we, the people, have to discuss how we want our society to be. And here's the reality. The reality is the people rule. All the power is with the people. What you were talking about, people, they get paid to do da-da-da-da-da, and we see pay is coming from the top down. But the reality is the pay comes from the work that the people did. So really, any pay we get actually comes from the labors of somebody else that the rich put into this monetary system and then give out money for. But that's all they're doing, is going, this work is worth this amount here, that's how much money you get paid. But that money is actually to buy the labor and services of other workers. So everything we enjoy in life actually comes from the 99, not the 1%. Yet it's the 1% dictating how life should be run. And they're dictating it in a way that, which is common human nature, that benefits them. So I say we know human nature.
You are working, you are making a product, and you're selling that, and you're getting money out of that. And you think that your boss is paying to you. So that is a game. They are playing with people. So I think we can talk about this for hours and hours and hours. You know that when people
Yeah, we can have this discussion, it'll never end.
Yeah, and I
One
think
thing I do find frustrating in discussing it with people, though, is when you hit some of the common people that want to start throwing facts out at you. Well, yeah, but people are da 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 da. No, you are throwing out facts based on a failing system. Like, because my point of view is our worldwide system, our societal system, has a 90% failure rate. And yet we're just supposed to accept that's the best we can do. I cannot imagine any child coming home from school with 10% on a test or as a grade for a class, and their parents going, well, that's the best you can do. Good job, Sonny. No, the parents would be flipping out. You can do better than that. But yet we're taught to accept this 10% success rate of our society. And it's just not acceptable, especially when we're considering that in some parts of the world, overall, I don't know if you're aware of this stat, but overall, the estimates are that one child, so we're talking under the age of 7, one child dies every 10 seconds from starvation or malnutrition-related diseases. Every 10 seconds. And yet, this is the best we can do. Oh, yeah, no. The price of coffee is too high.
And the thing
who cares about your coffee? Feed these kids.
And there's something else also. If you look toward the, if you have seen some of documentaries, if you have seen the children who are dying, there are animals who are ready to them to die so that they can feed on that person, that child. So that is how this is still happening in this world. And I think they just want to have those countries in their list so that they can show other people that why we have those funds and where we are putting that funds and why we need that money and why we need to have why need to put tax on the people, because tax money is going to those countries. And that is not happening. So I think,
well, and this brings up another point that I tried to make to people.
Because that is a very sensitive topic. We can talk about this for hours and hours, but all the best for you.
Ultimately, ultimately, when you look at it, every time there's a catastrophe, it's the common people that step up first. Then, if enough of their people do, governments step in and match them. Well, guys, we need a system that basically runs on the common people are trusted to do what's best for themselves. And if the system is, hey, you work 20 hours a week to do something productive for society, and society has to give you everything you need, we now have no need for these controlling interests at the top. We have no need for people to be dictating how things get done from the top down. It can be done from the bottom up.
Yeah.
And that's what's got to change, is this whole mentality of they know what's best for us, because no, they know what's best for them and how to take advantage of us. That's what they know.
And the thing is that even if you see the perspective of the thing that we're talking about, I think that would be another debate, and we would love to do that debate, because if you got a sensitive mind, you got an empathetic heart, you feel about that every day. The moment you get out of your house and you see that injustice happening around you, and you would see that how people are destroying themselves in the labor and getting very little for that. There's a lot of injustice in society, and that's why we need to have some kind of you like you said that evolution is required. So with this note, thank you so much, and I'll do my best for your book, and we would love to see more books from you. And what group we have talked about, listen for Lara Shepherd. She's going to talk about that. Thank you so much for your time today, and see you.
Thanks for having me and for letting me talk on. You can tell that I definitely have passions for a lot of these things. So
we can talk about
thanks
those
for having me
for hours and hours and hours, because we have.
I know we could. In fact, we have. If you think about our hourly,
exactly.
We do talk on and on.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for having me. Have yourself a great day.
Yeah, thank you.
Did you want me